it. I'm afraid I don't have any Luxembourgish, but thank you for speaking Irish as well in the Chamber. It's very welcome to have you here, and it's a real honour to have you here, and also to welcome Deputy Riley, who I know is leader of the Irish delegation to the Parliamentary Assembly. It's also very good to hear of the work that's being done in the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. I think we're all much more familiar in Ireland with the work of the European Court of Human Rights, and Senator Van Turnhout and others have mentioned some of the really significant cases that have been taken to the European Court of Human Rights by Irish citizens that have had a huge impact on our own society, and a positive impact, like David Norris's case, which you acknowledged, but also the case of Louise O'Keeffe, just ruled on by the court in January of this year, which has been hugely important in terms of establishing the need to ensure there are adequate remedies available for those who are victims of sexual abuse as children in schools. So that's had an important impact in Ireland too. You also mentioned the ABC case, which again has had a major impact here, and the hearings that you mentioned were in fact held in this Seanad chamber and were widely commended as a really exemplary model of a pre-legislative stage of drafting bills. I just wanted to also just pay tribute to the work that you do within the legislative wing, that is in the Parliamentary Assembly, that you've spoken about. You've spoken about the positive steps that have been taken on Ukraine. Senator Van Turnhout has spoken about your work on children's rights, but I was particularly interested in some of the work being done on equality issues, and in particular the launch just this month, the announcement of the launch this month by the Parliamentary Assembly of the No Hate Parliamentary Alliance. Senator Quinn mentioned the rise of extremism across Europe, and I note that you spoke about the need to launch a No Hate Parliamentary Alliance to commit parliamentarians to taking open, firm and proactive stands against racism, hatred and intolerance. And I thought your comment that this is a crucial role for politicians to play in combating hate speech, particularly at a time of economic and financial crisis, because such crises offer fertile grounds for a climate that distills hate. I think that's a very good example of the sort of positive work that the Parliamentary Assembly can do and is doing. And I just thank you again for coming here and telling us about that.
Senator Cullen.
Thank you, Rebecca Hurley. President Brasseur, I want to welcome you to the Seanad and to Dublin, and I hope you enjoy our short stay, and to commend you in the work that you are doing in Europe, and for your comprehensive contribution to the Seanad here today. And just to pick up on a number of the issues that you raised and the themes, and to support you on some of them. The first is in relation to the rights of the traveller community here in this state. I think we have a long way to go in terms of the responsibility of this state towards travellers, and I would welcome your thoughts on what practical steps the state could take to protect the rights of travellers here in this state. In relation to migrant groups, I think in general we can agree that there needs to be burden sharing across Europe as regards the issue of illegal migrants. But I would have a concern about the rise of far-right groups across Europe and their very anti-immigration positions. It is something that thankfully we don't have in this state, but we can see it happening in other states across Europe, and there is a lot of issues feeding into that rise as well, which maybe has little to do with immigration but more to do with economic issues in those states as well. But it is very worrying, and I would agree with Senator Quinn, who's not here now, that the rise of the far right especially is something that should worry us all, and what your views are on that. There's an issue in this state as well which I and my party have raised, which is the direct provision of asylum seekers, where they are provided for directly in what are called reception centres, and they don't have the right to work. They don't have a lot of rights, and it's really a policy of out of sight, out of mind, very little integration into the wider society. And very often these people are waiting years for their asylum process to be granted, and while that's happening they're kept in these reception centres. And I have to say that the management of those centres in some cases is questionable, and I would ask for your opinion on that overall policy and where maybe Ireland can improve in that area. In relation to the Ukraine, obviously we're all concerned about the unstable and the volatile situation in Ukraine. I certainly would agree that the annexation of Crimea by Russia was not legitimate for all sorts of different reasons. But I would have a concern about one of the reasons given by the EU for not supporting it, which is the constitution in the Ukraine, because we will have a referendum that will take place in Catalonia. And again, Spain's constitution also doesn't allow for a region to secede from the Spanish state. And this is a constitution that was essentially drawn up by Franco. And there's a huge majority of people in that region who would, in my view, support independence. And I think that the EU has to be open to that. It has to be supportive of the democratic right of citizens once elections are fair and once referendums which are held are fair and not under the pressure of a military occupation, which is what happened in the Ukraine, and then the very short lead-in to that referendum and all sorts of other issues. So I would have a concern there in relation to an inconsistency of approach in Europe, and would just ask for your opinion on that. And again, to wish you well in your short stay here in Dublin.
President, you have a couple of minutes to respond to a number of questions, if you wish.
Thank you. How many minutes do I have?
Maybe 5 minutes?
5 minutes to respond. Well, this is the most difficult task of my trip to Ireland. Well, concerning Russia, it's true we have to keep open the corridors of dialogue, and we can also learn from you how you tackled how you met the challenges during your history, and how you can overcome serious crisis. And it's only through dialogue, because sanctions must be on one hand, but on the other hand, if you don't speak to one another and listen to one another, even if you don't agree, but at least try to understand the other in his arguments, and then sit down to find solutions. But that only works if both sides want to find a solution. And of course, we can't force anybody to do it. And concerning Azerbaijan, they have now taken over the chairmanship, and I was very critical when I addressed in my opening address of the Standing Committee a fortnight ago in Baku. Because you have to be critical, but I see the chairmanship also as a window of opportunity for Azerbaijan to accelerate their reform process, because they have a lot really to do, and I think we have to address that. That's not patronizing, that's helping the countries to reach and to cope with the commitments they took when they joined the Council of Europe. You spoke about the vocational training. Well, that's true. That's something which is so important. And I'm glad the Council of Europe took that up, because we need people in Europe who are on hands, who know how young people, how to treat things, because you can delocalize jobs in other parts, but there are works which have to be done on the spot, and there we need qualified people. So I believe really in the importance of vocational training, and I'm glad we are going to have that resolution of Mr. Vach. And concerning your address about human rights in '49, our predecessors, they had the vision that after World War I, they understood that World War II was a result of World War I, because after World War I they didn't manage to find the right solutions. So after World War II, they sat down to have a pan-European organization and to have democracy, to defend democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. And then we tended to take that for granted. And if we look what happens today, I think it's more important than ever to focus on that, because you can't have stable countries, strong institutions without a democratic system, and you can't have a democratic system if you don't have human rights, and if that is not based on the rule of law. So we really have to continue to work together on that. And then you asked me how the situation between Russia and Ukraine is going to develop. Well, I don't know. Of course, nobody knows, but there is some hope, and I hope that we can continue with the dialogue in order to find solutions. You spoke also about the neighboring countries and Moldova. I'm going in a fortnight. I'm going to, after the session, I'm going to Moldova to meet the people, because it is important that they feel the support of the Council of Europe. And I have not the pretension of solving the problem of Transnistria, but to assure them that they belong to the European family. And then one word of the relations to the EU. I always say, and I stress it, that the Council of Europe can't be seen as a waiting room for the European Union. We have to focus on our core business, which is human rights. In the 47 member states, that means the whole geographical Europe, except Kosovo and Belarus, but all the other countries. And so the relations with the European Union, well, the European Union decided to join the Convention on Human Rights, but there we have still some way to go, but I think that is important. And we have also agreements where the European Union is funding action plans of the Council of Europe, especially in neighboring countries, as in northern, in the Maghreb states, for instance. Then achievements of the Council of Europe. I must say, there were serious crises in different countries, like in Albania, where the opposition refused to sit in the parliament, thus making it impossible to work because they needed a qualified majority in order to get started. We went, as a Council of Europe, as a parliamentary assembly, we went to Albania, we spoke to the people, and we contributed. We didn't solve the problem because they had to solve the problem themselves, but we contributed in finding solutions. The same in Romania, when the President Basescu was, well, they tried to force him to step down. So there we made also a contribution, not to speak about all the conventions we said we had. Concerning the financing, it's true that the Council of Europe is getting less money because we have a zero nominal growth budget, and that we have to continue to get money. I don't think the Russians are going to withdraw and not paying any more. The question about OSCE. Well, we have to continue, and I went to see the Secretary General of the OSCE, so we have to keep relations. And I think they are responsible for security, and we are responsible for human rights. And you can't develop human rights without security, and you don't have sound security without human rights. So we have to continue to work closer together. And then one question which was put by several of you is the extremism in Europe. That is more than worrisome. And I make an appeal, and I did it before, to all democratic parties, despite our political differences in many subjects, to stick together in order to combat extremism, because that is very dangerous, especially now with the economic crisis we have in all our countries, and that is easy for all those populists. So we have to combat that, because we know how it worked in the 30s, where people warned, and then some people said, well, it's not that dangerous. Look what happens now in Greece. They have the Golden Dawn Party, and then I was told, well, that's because of the economic crisis and protest voters, but they made 16% in essence at the local elections. So there we really must stick together in order to combat that. And then the children's rights. Yes, we have to start by that. And children's rights and protection. And I think that you can Ireland can make efforts in order to join those conventions to make them even stronger. And the role and future of the Council of Europe, I think if we focus on human rights and on structuring, and I come back to Ukraine, why well, it's not the only reason, but one of the problems in Ukraine is also they have very weak institutions. And weak institutions are not able to give answers to a serious crisis. It starts with their constitution and with corruption. The justice is not independent. So there we see how important it is to have those core values in every country deeply rooted, and there the Council of Europe really can help through its instruments to help those countries. And then, yes, the No-Hate Parliamentary Alliance, that is also linked to the extremisms coming up, and there we have to stick together, and that is very, very important. A last word about the traveller community rights. We have there is the last report of the Commissioner for Human Rights of 2011, and I have no time to go into details, but there are some ways how to tackle that, and I think you should work on that, as well as asylum seekers and refugees. And migration should be one of the focuses of all our countries, where we need a common policy. Otherwise, this also will help the extremist parties in getting more support and telling that the migrants are responsible for everything. So we need to find an answer to that. And then a last question, territorial integrity. It's very difficult. How self-determination? How far can it go? I think, like in now your neighbours with Scotland, if the country they are in, if they agree on a referendum and that the referendum is fair and it meets all the requirements, that can be a solution. But it has to be in the framework of the Constitution, first of all, in line with all international requirements, and not being left to a populist party coming up and splitting a country and make it weaker and then more vulnerable. I think I tried to answer all the questions, and I would like to close in one word in Luxembourgish. To say thank you, which in Luxembourgish means Filmots merci. Courage, Matragot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Can I ask the leader to propose a vote of thanks to
Thank you, Eireann, and thank you very much, Madam Brasseur, for your excellent address to the House, and indeed the response which you've given to the members of the House. We apologise for the delay in bringing you into the House, but parliamentary democracy, as you know, things can happen that you can't always legislate for in the House, but we're very delighted to have you here and for your address. Apologise for the members of the Council of Europe who are not here. They give their apologies. I think they're away on further business. But again, thank you most sincerely for coming to address us. It was an honour for us, and we wish you every success for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next item. Airports Seanad Group Bill 2014, report stage. For State Airports Shannon Group Bill 2014 report stage. And before we commence, I would like to remind senators that a senator may speak only once at report stage, except the proposer of an amendment, who may reply to the discussion on the amendment. And also at report stage, each amendment must be seconded. So the Amendment 1, in the names of Senators Barrett, Crown and Quinn, arises out of committee proceedings. 1 and 2 are related and may be discussed together by agreement. Is that agreed? Agreed.
Thank you,
Senator Barrett.
As the Minister's amendment is much superior to the one that I proposed, I won't be moving my amendment. The issue was about directives that the Minister might wish to publish, and it arose events in the past when directives were given in relation to Dublin Airport. But that's history. We discussed it at the earlier stage, as you know, last year. And I think the Minister's formula to deal with the problem is much better than the one that's in my amendment, so I won't push mine. The issue was I think, as the Minister's amendment showed, was about security issues. Mine is less sophisticated. Let's publish it someplace, but I think the Minister has tackled the problem in a much more thorough way, so I will move Amendment 1 and withdraw by leave of the House.
1 and 2 are being discussed together, so do you wish to speak to number 2?
Number 2, I think the Minister has extremely well dealt with issues of security, which was his concern. We were concerned with economics issues. He is concerned with both, and I think therefore that's part of the reason why it's a better amendment than the one that is put down in the name of Senator Quinn, Crown and myself. So after speaking on number 2, I'd like to welcome number 2 and to endorse it.
Okay, thank you, Senator Sullivan. Minister, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, that's Amendment 2 is a government amendment, and it follows on from the discussion that we had previously in this House. And what it does, it requires the Minister, if making a direction to Shannon Airport, that direction has to be laid before the House of the Oireachtas, save where there are security concerns. So it really is an amendment that seeks to facilitate the points made by Senator Barrett and Senator O'Brien previous session.
Thank you, Mr. So I move Government Amendment number 2. Then is that agreed? Agreed. Amendment number 3, in the names of Senators O'Brien, Byrne, the Fianna Fáil senators, arises out of committee proceedings. Is that over here to move? Okay, so that amendment is not. So Amendment 4, in the names of Senators Barrett, Crown and Queen, cannot 4 cannot be moved. 4, 5 and 6 are related and can be discussed together. Is that agreed? Agreed. Senator Barrett, could you please move Amendment number 4?
The point arising, I suppose, it's the last-minute appeal on behalf of Cork Airport. We've had discussed with the matter with the Minister, and he's drawn our attention to disadvantages and so on that could arise. The case we were making, you may recall, is that Cork is actually substantially bigger than Shannon in terms of passenger numbers. I suppose there was an inherent hope that on its own it could actually operate as a successful competing airport, versus some scepticism that run as an appendage to Dublin that it would ever achieve the kind of freedom that Cork people as an independent Republic of Cork always aspire to. It would rank in the top 20 airports in the United Kingdom. Lots of those operate independently. I know, as the Minister explained to us the last day, that there's the problem of, I think, 168 million worth of terminal, and what do we do with it? And I suppose we would hope that the Cork Airports Authority would not be dissolved, that the problem of the terminal might be resolved, say, in a number of years, and could get on with being an independent airport, competing against Seanad and so on. In other words, I'm complimenting the Minister very strongly for what he's done for Seanad. He's given it its independence. Senator Conway in particular is a great advocate of Shannon's independence in this House, and we wish it well as it goes off. I'd like something similar for Cork. I do recognise the problem, what you do with the terminal, which was built and opened at the wrong time, and is a millstone around somebody's neck. The DAA can take that millstone because it's a larger organisation. Could it remain with the DAA? Can we find somebody who might use it for some other purpose? Not being entirely facetious, that I think when there was surplus terminal capacity in Kerry Airport at one stage, the Klinga company could use it to store things. I mean, that sitting there as a white elephant, preventing the development of Cork Airport, is something that I would seek to avoid. And that's the purpose of those amendments, to ask the Minister, as he's been so skillful in accommodating the amendments in relation to the publication of directives, does he have any magic formula which will allow Cork to get into the same administrative structure as Shannon, get off and develop itself and attract new airlines and promote itself, rather than be a branch of Dublin Airport. And I think, as I said the last day, Minister, the breakup of national airports authorities, the British Airports Authority used to run 7 or 8, 9, 10 of them in the United Kingdom. Airports are becoming separate, standalone businesses, competing with each other. It's in the environment, as the Minister mentioned the last day, where airlines are much more competitive now than they used to be. In the national airline, non-competing airline model. And I'd like to see Cork participate to the full extent in that. And so I think what a lot of Cork people would like to see happening. So that's the purpose of our amendments, to not proceed with the dissolution of the Cork Airport Authority, in the hope that at some time in the next couple of years we might work out a formula at which it could be a separate independent airport, and in fact help the entire economy, because it and Shannon competing would ensure that neither of them would have the kind of productivity problems that they had in the past, and they might be a bit more careful about their investment plans as well. So again, I thank you, Lascar, and I thank the Minister. That's the problem we were trying to solve there. I see a much better future for Cork as an independent airport on the Shannon model that the Minister has so persuasively advocated here, and we support. Could something be done for Cork along similar lines?
Senator Barrett, have we a seconder for the motion?
Yes, I'd like to second that.
Senator Quinn.
May I just say, Minister, I think Senator Barrett has expressed very well the whole concept. I'm a huge believer that of independence in items like this. I have had a chance in the last year to visit Knock Airport, the Ireland West in Knock, and see the enthusiasm that is there, and what can happen there, and what they can do. Now, I know they're making a charge there for independent flights. For flights, everybody going out there has to pay. I can't remember whether it's €10 or €20, but it just seems to be working. Now, whether they're making money yet, I don't know, but there are so many other areas. One of the things we did when we were working on that was to go to the John Lennon Airport in Liverpool and to see what they have done and how it changed when they were part of a bigger structure, and when they got their independence, what they've been able to do. And I was recently in Southend Airport down in the south of England, and to see the efforts they're putting in there on that basis as well. So I believe if you've got the commitment of the local area, independence, I believe a lot can be done. And it would be a shame I suppose, to end up involving it with a much larger institution where it will always be a second-class citizen. And I believe it's much better if we can give it its independence and set up a team there that will make that work.
Thank you, Senator.
Briefly to support the previous speakers and to formally move Amendment 3.
Amendment 3 was missed there, sorry. Amendment 3 was missed there.
Yeah.
Can't move.
Can I call the Minister to respond?
I should just say that this section isn't about the merits and demerits of separating Cork Airport. I think at a time in the future when Cork Airport is stronger, when it's operating costs match its income, and when we have a solution to the terminal debt, I think at that point it may well be possible to separate Cork Airport, and that may well make sense at that time. It would also have to make sense as well in terms of the DAA's balance sheet. What the section is about dissolving the Cork Airport Authority plc, which is a company that has existed for quite some time but has no assets, no real power. It's really just an edifice, and I don't really see much point in continuing that. And even for the directors who served on it, many of whom were excellent directors, it just didn't make sense for them either to have this shadow company, if you like, that didn't actually have an airport to run. So what the section does is it dissolves that company, but does allow us to re-establish it again at a point further down the road when it's for real. So, you know, what this is about is getting rid of the pretense. It doesn't preclude us from re-establishing SCAA if and when the time is right to go with separation of Cork. What I can do, though, on an administrative basis, though, is change the title. The title reads Section 31, Dissolution of Cork Airport Authority. I can change that to Section 31, Cork Airport Authority. Just for clarity, I think Senator Barrett had proposed something on those lines previously, but I really can't see any case in keeping a shadow company in operation with no airport to run, doing nothing. Until we figure out what to do with Cork. I think it makes sense to close it now and then re-establish it at a later point when we actually have a clear plan.
Senator Barrett to respond.
I thank the Minister, and I think in one of our earlier amendments we had put in to delete the words dissolution of before Cork Airport Authority. There is now, in the formulation that the Minister has given us, a plan. It might be happening a bit slower than I would wish, but the Cork Airport Authority can be revived, as the Minister has said, if the circumstances permit, and I hope that happens quickly. I think it would happen faster if it were an independent body, but at least the wording of the bill now provides for a future for the Cork Airport Authority rather than dissolution of. So I welcome the Minister's changing it, and I suppose all of us who have monster connections would wish that this would happen sooner rather than later, Minister, as I'm sure you would as well, because it will mean that the debt burden will be reduced by attracting more and more airlines and more passengers. So I thank the Minister for his response, and I won't move the amendments that we had in relation to the Cork Airport Authority.
Amendment 4 being withdrawn.
Withdraw by leave of the House, if I may.
Is that agreed? Amendment 5 being withdrawn by leave of the House. Senator Barrett.
Indeed. That's correct. By permission of the House, yes.
So we've already discussed it, Senator. Are you moving it or not?
No, I wish to withdraw by permission of the House amendment number 5. And if we were to continue, I would also wish to withdraw amendment number 6.
Okay, so 5 and 6 now. Is that agreed? Agreed. Amendment number 7 in the names of Senators, Fianna Fáil Senators O'Brien, Byrne and others.
Yeah. That's Gaelic, just formally propose the amendment.
Are we seconder for that amendment?
Second.
Minister.
This really is just we discussed this at some length previously. It's to rename Dublin Airport Authority as DAA because it's not just Dublin. It doesn't just do at airports, and it isn't an authority. So the name is inappropriate. We want to change it to DAA instead of Dublin Airport Authority. And the reason why DAA was chosen rather than a whole new name was just not to have to incur expensive rebranding costs. So I guess it's a bit like CRH or IBM or KPMG. They used to stand for something, but they no longer do.
Senator Sullivan, are you pressing the amendment?
Amendment press.
Okay, so the question is that the words proposed to be deleted stand. Those in favour?
No,
Those against, say nay. I think the question is carried and the amendment is negative. Amendment 8, in the names of Senators O'Brien, Byrne, and Ford Senators arises after committee proceedings.
That's Gaelic formally moved the amendment.
Second, or we?
Second.
Second by Senator Power. Any contributors? Minister?
These would just be consequential amendments relating to the preceding sections. So, considering that we haven't made the previous amendments, there be no purpose in going ahead with this amendment.
Yes. The question is that the words proposed to be deleted stand. Those in favour?
Leave.
The words have to stand.
Those in favour say aye. Those against the question is carried and the amendment is negatived. Amendment number 9 in the names of Senators O'Brien, Byrne and the Fianna Fáil Senators. Can I propose moving the amendment?
Please. I'd like to propose amendment number 9. This relates to the superannuation schemes, the Irish aviation pensions. Minister, when we spoke on this issue on Tuesday, I welcomed the assurance that you gave the House that the expert panel would meet with the deferred pensioners before drawing up their report. I then received correspondence from the deferred pensioners to say that they were concerned that they'd been given a meeting date, which was today, but that they had heard on RT News that the report was going to be published tomorrow. And that obviously gave them some cause for alarm, because they wondered if the report would have already been pretty much written before they'd had their meeting. But I've just, before I came down to the House, received a phone call from one of the pensioner representatives that was at the meeting this morning with the expert panel, and they were told quite clearly by the representatives of the expert panel that the report, which they're publishing, be that tomorrow or next week or whatever it is, you might indicate to the House when exactly you expect that to be, but that the report will not refer to pensioners or to deferred pensioners in any way, because the terms of reference for the expert panel referred only to the Labour Court and LRC recommendations, and because they're not part of that process, the report will not refer to them or their entitlements or changes to their entitlements and how they'll be affected. I think that's incredibly unfair. We've raised this issue here in the past, myself and Senator O'Brien, about the role of pensioners and deferred pensioners as part of this process. I think it's important that an agreement is reached that's fair to everybody. But for that to happen, everybody needs to have their voice heard as well as part of that process. So I think that's extremely unfair. I would ask you to ensure that the report is not published until a way is found of making sure that it will take into account and will reflect the concerns of the pensioners and the deferred pensioners. And if that requires a ministerial, if that requires you to get in contact with the expert panel and request that they would take those into account, then I would request that you would do so. Because I did welcome the other day when you said that they would meet with the deferred pensioners and would take them into account. It now seems that meeting really was just a cosmetic exercise, because they were told straight away, thanks for coming, but we can't really take your concerns into account and you will not be referred to in the report. I just think it's incredibly unfair, and I think it's incumbent on you to act now before the report is finalised to ensure that these issues are addressed properly.
Thank you, Senator. Have we seconded the motion? Senator Cullen.
Yes, I certainly don't want to rehash the argument we had at committee stage, Minister. We've put on the record our opposition to this section of the bill, which we believe should have been a standalone section, but we won't go over that ground again. And just to make the point at report stage that I think it is wrong for us and premature for the Minister to be proceeding with this when the expert panel still hasn't concluded its work and published its report. And we've heard from a senator that the deferred pensioners are not happy with the meeting that they had, and they were not given the assurances that they would have wanted. So I think that our concerns that we articulated at both second stage and committee stage are justified, and for that reason I'll be supporting the amendment and opposing the bill in its entirety because of the section which I think the Minister is trying to tag on to this bill. I think it's bad parliamentary practice, as I said, in the past. I don't agree with it, and I'll be opposing the bill on that basis.
Thank you, Senator Cullen and Minister Bradley.
Just in relation to Senator Power's questions, the meeting that the deferreds had with the expert panel was the second meeting they had, so it certainly wasn't a cosmetic meeting to be held the day before a report was published. It was actually the second meeting that they had with the panel, and the report isn't going to be published tomorrow. That's not correct. I don't know when it'll be published. It may well be next week, and I haven't been briefed by the expert panel as their work was ongoing, so I don't know if what you said is correct or not. But certainly, both me and my officials will have sight of it before it does get published. The section that's here in the bill really allows for three things. It allows for the existing staff in the airports and Aer Lingus to withdraw from the pension scheme if they want to stop making contributions and withdraw voluntarily if they wish to. That's something they've asked for quite some time. I think they should be allowed to do that. It allows for any agreement that may be made on foot of the expert panel's report to be implemented, and we need legislative provision for that, and that's what this does. And thirdly, what it does is it provides for an alternative to wind up. If the Pensions Authority were to choose to wind up the pension fund. So, I think it makes sense to have all these things in legislation, as I've explained previously.
Senator Power.
Thank you. Minister, what I'm looking for essentially, and I know you said you weren't present at the meeting this morning, so you don't know what was said. I'm just relaying to you the message I was given by someone who was there. So what I'm looking for from yourself is an assurance that you will contact the expert panel and ensure that the issues affecting pensioners and deferred pensioners are considered in the report, because otherwise, if all they got was a meeting to tell them that their concerns couldn't be taken into account at all, then that is a cosmetic exercise. So I'm asking if you would at least ensure that there isn't a difficulty with the terms of reference, and that the expert panel, in making its report, be that tomorrow or next week or whenever, will take into account the entitlements of pensioners and deferred pensioners.
Thank you, Senator Power.
Like I say, I don't, not you nor I were at that meeting, and often what one person can relay from a meeting isn't necessarily what actually happened at that meeting. So I prefer to hear from the expert panel themselves and read their report. Well, whatever they come out with is not gospel. It'll have to be discussed by the various parties involved, including the companies. I find it hard to understand how the expert panel could come up with a solution that doesn't, in some way, refer to the pensioners and the deferred pensioners. I don't see how that could be the case, but I'd like to know all the facts first. So, obviously, I'll await the next report of the panel.
Thanks, Minister. Is the amendment being pressed? The question is that the words proposed to be deleted stand. Those in favour? Said no. Those against? I think the question is carried. The amendment is negative. Amendment number 10 in the name of the Senators Barrett, Crown and Quinn arises out of committee proceedings. Senator Barrett, to move.
That this arose from the discussion earlier, as you said, that not least one of the problems we were talking about, the terminal in Cork. There were also reviews earlier of things like low labour productivity in both Dublin and Shannon, a tendency to invest way ahead of needs, leaving the airports with the capital debt and so on. So we thought around this, and the kind of ideas we had on data that you need, and the department needs, and indeed the House needs, to see if airport investments are efficient, were numbers like passengers per employee, the workload units per employee, the operating cost per workload unit, the capital cost per workload unit, aircraft movements per employee, aircraft movements per runway, passengers per airport gate, passenger per square metre of terminal, and so on. And in the earlier discussions, the Minister felt there was indeed a need for this data. We were keen that we might locate the data centre in the Commission for Aviation Regulation, but we weren't going to sort of insist on that. The Minister mentioned the possibility that he might locate it in his department, and he mentioned improvements in the data that they've been carrying out, in particular in relation to the independent bus sector. And we could also, I suppose, have required the airport companies themselves to include some of these measures of efficiency. So part 7 of the bill is titled Miscellaneous Amendments, Airports. So that's why we propose inserting there that one of probably the first requirement, and the Minister has most interesting proposals, as members will know, about parking and clamping and dazzling and the duties of directors. But in that section, should there not also be the need that the Minister acknowledged last day for ensuring that airports are efficient performers, particularly in a world where airlines compete so strongly, as they now do in Europe. So what we proposed, that we recognise there's a need for the statistics. We had the discussion as where they might be, and so we give the Minister, and the Minister also mentioned an aviation strategy, which his department is working on. But given that the data is needed, and given most strongly, and I'll come back to that, that the data, if there, would have assisted us in not committing the kind of Celtic Tiger mistakes that were made in the airports, and the kind of legacy that the Minister is now resting with, that we should have statistics. So we allowed the Minister to cause to be published statistics. Are our airports price competitive internationally? Do they invest efficiently? Are their operating costs efficient? And then we give the Minister and such other performance indicators as the Minister deems appropriate. Now, since we started this debate, which I've found most useful, I must say, that the Commission on Aviation Regulation has reported on the 29th of May, and it's required quite a substantial reduction in the maximum charges at Dublin Airport. So, in other words, I suppose you could say that there were inefficiencies there to be wound out of the system, and there will be price cuts. I estimate of about slightly under 22% in the next 5 years because of the excess costs which they found there. Now, what might they be, and would they have been found in advance if we had this data bank that's proposed in our amendment, that only 773 of the 925 million cost of the new terminal in Dublin would have been allowed. That's on page 42 of their report. Page 44, they disallowed 31 million of capex. And they say they disallowed just over half of the DAA's proposals. That's on page 49. 200 million disallowed, and another case, in case 72, 183 million disallowed. It says after that as well. It says, for instance, that because producing this infrastructure seems to have taken over as the object, that it says on page 43 that sort of goodies, if you like, are offered to the airlines without telling the airlines, by the way, it's going to cost you a lot more to run the airport. Yeah, we'd all like marble halls and so on. The statements that they found on staff, there's a legacy staff problem in Terminal 1 in Dublin Airport. Their staff costs increased substantially between 2007 and 2009. I think when the rest of us were in somewhat of a recession at that stage. IT costs 5.8% of the revenues compared to 4.3% of the European average. Operating costs, page 24, 25% more than all airports in our sample. I think that was a study by Booz, which is actually commissioned by the airport itself, and a very rapid increase in non-staff costs. So the Minister needs, and the Oireachtas needs, and the public needs to be aware of people bearing airport terminals and high expenses and high operating costs, because they damage the competitiveness of the Irish economy. And as we found in the Seanad case, with the precipitous drop of traffic, and the Minister mentioned 61%, that it damages tourism. So we need, where a market is dominated by one company, and this one is dominated by somewhat less because the Minister has given Seanad its freedom, but we still need to know right here and right in the Cabinet and right in the Minister's Department how efficient these airports are, and whether their labour and capital productivity is up to the mark. The Minister has recognised the data requirements for that. I think the case is strengthened by the report on the 29th of May 2014 from the Commission for Aviation and Regulation. The data would be useful in decision making. And as I said, we leave it to the Minister where he might wish to publish them. I think that the need for more data was accepted, I think, on all sides the last day. But the Minister, I think the Central Statistics Office was also mentioned as a possible place to publish the data. But we will make better and more informed decisions if we're able to answer the kind of questions that are posed in various reviews of Irish airports in relation to the tendency to overinvest and to incur operating costs which are in excess of those elsewhere in a very competitive aviation market. I think having the data someplace, either in the Department's annual report or in the aviation strategy, or using the CSO or the Commission for Aviation Regulation, would enhance public decision making in an area where it's needed, because one of the reasons for the bill is we're trying to deal with certain legacy problems of excess expenditures and excess costs in the past.
Thank you very much, Senator Barrett. Have we somebody to second them?
Yes, Mayor, I second the motion and the amendment, and I don't think I can improve on what Senator Barrett has said, except there's little doubt it is an incentive to any organisation to have the knowledge publicly, comparing yourselves and how efficient you are with other organisations. And I think this has to act as a great incentive. I believe the openness and that knowledge will act as an incentive. I believe it would be worthy of consideration that this should take place.
Quinn, Minister Bradcock.
Yeah, I certainly support the intent behind the amendment, and I do think we need to have better aviation statistics, and that we need to publish them, collect them and publish them regularly. I'm not convinced that it needs to be put in legislation the way it's done now, and I would like to take some time in the context of the aviation policy to decide what sort of data should be collected, whether the CSO, the CAR or the department should do it. And I'd also point out as well is that actually the CSO already has a role in the collection of the basic stats, and the Taoiseach signed a statutory instrument under the Statistics Act only in February, reaffirming that the Central Statistics Office is to be the recipient of returns submitted by the airports and ports. The first SI dealt with air traffic, the second with sea traffic. So it's something obviously I'd have to discuss with the CSO and the Taoiseach as well, because that there already is a legislative provision there for the CSO to do it. So it's something that I support in principle, but I can't support the amendment because I really think it needs to be considered more fully, and I need to have some consultation with the potential bodies as to who might collect the statistics and how.
Thanks, Minister. Senator Barrett, any final?
I thank the Minister for his openness as with several amendments we've put down on this. I think it's anything we can do on this side of the House when we're having the discussions, Minister, we'd be glad to help. We do have a problem. I think that left to themselves, airport architects and engineers would gladly spend the entire GDP on building new airports, and we're attempting to put some kind of restraint on their activity by requiring the numbers. And I was just thinking there that the growth of Charleroi, for instance, in Belgium, to a 5 million passenger airport was because it was independent from the main Brussels airport, and was soon able to assist the authorities in Belgium to say, by the way, we can do all these things without that many terminals and without that high level of labour costs. And the information we're trying to get before policymakers would have come up with that kind of consequence. in that context, there's not likely to be a competing Dublin airport to restrain it from excesses, so there has to be an administrative solution involving the kind of numbers and the kind of publication that the Minister has mentioned, and I'm glad he's open to that development, and say that we will assist him if we can be of any great use in that. But it is important that we recognise that we got into a serious problem of high cost to airports and overinvestment because we didn't have these kinds of numbers. There was nobody there to say, by the way, you already have far too many runways for an airport that size, or far too much terminal buildings. And by the way, your costs are too high. That may be why airlines don't want to fly to your airport, not because the Minister for Tourism hasn't been promoting your destination enough. You have to get into the marketplace and meet these airlines. So I won't push the amendment, but I'm glad that it is in the Minister's thoughts that we would do something like that as the aviation policy develops. And again, to thank him for his interest and response.
Thank you, Senator Barrett. So, Amendment 10 is not being moved.
Been withdrawn. Amendment 10 by permission.
That the bill as amended be received for final consideration. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Next stage.
Now.
That the bill do now pass. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
The question is that the bill do now pass. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Those in favour say thaw.
Thaw.
Those against say neil.
Neil.
I think the question is carried. Fourth thaw.
Yes.